Beginning the current Daf Mesechta Bava Metzia Daf Samach Dalid, begin on the bottom of Samach Gimel Beis, 6 lines up at the bottom of the Amud, where the Gemara continues with a series of teachings from Rav Nachman, obviously on this, as he opened up the klal of the Rebisa, is the general rule of the prohibition of interest is called agar notrele, which is the theme of ribis. Any profit that's getting from waiting for someone to pay is also, because that's really the concept of ribis, which is that you give someone money and the waiting for him to pay is what interest is being charged for. And Rav Nachman continues on that theme about when someone's giving more, is that necessarily a violation of ribis or not? Throughout the entire world. So discussing today's daf are so if someone gives money to the gardener for his pumpkins, so the machlek is Rav and Rav. Rav says less nu aser. If he doesn't have it, it's forbidden. Rav says even though it's going to be mutter, we'll see exactly why that would be, even though that size is not there. Hamavas Chaveiroi, the next Mishnah tells if someone lends his friend money, he cannot live in his courtyard for free, and he can't rent it from him at a cheaper price. Is because ultimately, since he lent him money, now anything else is going to be factored in to the profit of the lending, which would be a problem about ribis. If someone lends, so therefore, if someone lends someone money and he lives in his court, he has to give him the wages for being over there. So, what happens if someone was collecting that money of ribis? And what happened is that the price of wheat for 4 grivi was 1 zuz in the marketplace. And he gives it to him for 5. We'll see in the Gemara exactly what happens if, let's say, he's giving him ribis money and he's giving him a certain price due to the fact, and then when you collect you have to give back the ribis money. How do we factor in pricing that was done when it was being done for the payment of ribis? So begin the current daf Samach Gimel Beis, 6 lines up at the bottom of the Yomid. We're in the middle of a conversation here with Rav Nachman's teachings. Rav Nachman, he says, if someone borrowed money from his friend, turns out the money he got from the guy is more than what he said to his friend that he was borrowing from him. So it says the Gemara like this: if it's within the range that you could say that the lender made a mistake in his counting and he didn't realize, so you would have to give that back, that extra money that's there in the pile. And if not, it doesn't make sense that it would be a miscalculation. That means the guy gifted you this money and you can keep it. Says Gemara, how do you evaluate if it's something, a mistake a guy could have made? So he says, I'll tell you, as you continue of Samach Dalad Alf, Bisur Yasa v'chum Shiyasa, in 10s and in 5s. Meaning, if you could divide the excess money to find in units of 10 or 5, and you don't have an excess of 1 or 2 that doesn't reach a category of 5, then you could say he made a mistake with his calculations. So, for example, let's say it's when 10s, and he made a mistake between 50 and 40, or between 40 and 30. So that makes sense that he just did an extra 10. People go in units of 10. Now, if it's not in 10s, but it's in 5s, so people sometimes count in 5s. 5, 10, 15, 20. So if there's a mistake in 5s, that would make sense that he made a mistake. Rashi actually says, let's say it's a huge gap. For example, let's say he gave 55 more. Says, yeah. So he could have made a mistake in 10s, like we explained, where there's he could have made a mistake of 50 in one jump. He could have made a mistake, and which is in units of 10. And in the mistake of 5s, he could have made a mistake between 3 and 4. Or if let's say the excess is 15 more, 25 more, he could have made 3 mistakes or 5 mistakes in calculating 5s. You're counting a lot of 5s. He miscalculated once, miscalculated twice, but these are in 5s, so it could have been 15 extra, could have been 25 extra if you're going in units of 5. But if let's say the excess over the 5s is 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, which doesn't reach to 5, so then he didn't make a mistake. Because what does that mean? It sounds like you don't count in ones, and that's the mistakes he would have made. So therefore, if you're excess of 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, that's a gift. So, I mean, people usually ask me then, what do you want to just ask him? Not around, we could assume. But the point is that a B'chtei Das Taya would be in 10s or in 5s, which that's how they would count, like Taisa says, but us that we count ones, so you're right, everything would be a B'chtei Das Taya. But it sounds like that's what they were accustomed to counting in 5s or in 10s. Now, Amalei Ravacha Beredu Rav Ashi says, but if the guy who's lending him the money is inish tekifahu, is a difficult type of a person. The Loyov Matana, this guy's not usually doing such kindness and giving freebies, bringing free gifts. So what could you suspend this extra 1 or 2 to hold on to it if it's obviously not a gift? So Malay says, you're right, since he cannot say that he made a mistake in the calculation, so what is it? So what is it? What's the extra about? He's not a guy who's giving you gifts either. So he suspended to say that Dilma Migzal Gazli. Maybe this difficult person had stolen from him a long time ago, and this borrower doesn't recall that. Now the guy wants to do tshuva, the ivle becheshbon, and he's absorbing it into the calculation. He sticks it in when in the quote unquote money he's lending you, but he's really paying you back, and that's why you can keep it. It's not like Lina Brisa. If someone robs his friend, but then he just absorbs it into some calculation of money that he's giving him. So you feel the obligation. So therefore, that's why there's a discrepancy. But the end, if you could keep it, says the Gemara. But what do you do? What happens if it's someone who's from a random guy? You never did any business with him. You don't know him from a hole in the wall. What would the halacha be over there? Again, it wouldn't make sense as toys in the cheshbon. It can't be he's giving you a gift. Can't be he's doing a Shabbos Exela. So what would be the idea over there? So Malay says, Dilma in the Shachrina Gazli. No, maybe somebody else stole from him. Vamalay, he's telling the lender, when this guy borrows money from you, absorb it into the calculation. So although you don't know this guy from a hole in the wall, maybe someone else who stole from you is telling him, do me a tima taiva, I'm too embarrassed to go return this gazela. Here, just give the guy extra few more dollars, and that'll be the matana. Right, so that's like by animals or whatever, like you have to know to that thing. Oh, I'm saying by Shabbos Exela, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's what the Gemara is saying, that you could just give it back, however it is. He doesn't have to. Yeah, but when it's like a Shabbos Aveda, then like you have to let the guy know exactly right. But if the guy's just giving back money, so that seems to be that would be enough. Oh, maybe here that he's getting it back, and he knows obviously that it's a Shabbos Exela, because what else is the guy getting money from? So Rav Kana says, he says, I was sitting at the end of the shiur when Rav was finishing his drasha. He was finishing his shiur. I didn't hear the beginning of the shiur. But I heard Rav was mentioning, throughout his drasha, he kept on mentioning gourds, the pumpkins. Yeah, that's all I heard in the shiur. I didn't know what he was talking about. I came at the end of the shiur. Basta the Rav. After Rav got up, I said to the yeshiva, my kari the Rav. What's this Rav saying? Pumpkins. What was the shiur about? Suddenly they said to me, Rav. This is what Rav said. If someone gave money to the gardener, to the farmer, for pumpkins, and you were able to get 10 pumpkins for a zuz, b'nei zarta, the size of a zeres. A zeres is the size of a half a amma. So, and then he tells him, look, you know what? I'm going to give you at a later point in time, b'nei garmida. The farmer says, I'll give you the size of an amma, double the size. But you're paying me now for the smaller ones. I'll give you, if you want to wait, I'll give you the bigger ones. So says Rav like this. Rav and the shiur were saying, Isnahu, if the farmer has in his garden actual large ones the size of an amma, sorry, they're allowed to do this. Lesnahu, if he doesn't, all his pumpkins are still small. Also, it's forbidden for them to make up this idea of giving at a later point in time the bigger ones. Says Gemara, Pshita. It's obvious. That's the mission of Ayin Beis, that if you don't have, so that's giving more That's agar natrale. That was the theme of what we said is ribbis. You're giving back, you're holding on to the money for this interim period. I'll give you more than what you paid for. Of course, that's going to be awesome. Says no. Ma'uditim, what would you say? Kivin de memela karavu. Since that the growth of the pumpkins is automatic, it's a passive thing. It's a by default. Shapadam, you would say, you could give him those pumpkins because that's really the pumpkins you're giving him now. You're just waiting till they get bigger. That's the chiddush to say that no, ultimately you're going to give him later on 6 months, 3 months from now, bigger, more than what he gave because of the money that he's lending him, and therefore it's going to be awesome. Says the Gemara, come on, who's this like? Kaitan the time, like the time of the following brisa. The brisa says the following teaching: if someone's going to milk his goats, and to cut the hair of his sheep, or to go ahead and take down the lobes, which is since they're made like these lobes and they're attached from wall to wall, so getting down these beehives is called ridia, just like when you take the bread off from the oven walls that it's stuck to. So he's going to take down, this guy lives on a farm and he's going to do some of his farming duties, collecting his goodies of the farm. Now Matzachaver, his friend sees him all geared up. Vamalei says to him, look, you know what? Masha izi chalva is machalach. Whatever my goats will be milked this time, I'll sell you for this amount of money, whether a lot or a little, you'll get whatever milk will come out. Or masha decheli gaiza is machalach. Whatever the shearings of wool will come, are sold to you. Or whatever honey is going to come out, whatever loaves I'm going to get down, is sold to you. Says the Brisa mutter. That's permitted. Why? So this is a very important theme that we'll see later on in this parak, because he's accepting on himself loss and profit. Because,
that can, whatever they produce, telling you only this thing, it will be designated.
Right.
It's a difference when it's just saying general.
Right. And actually, that's going to be a little related to the next case that the Bryce is going to mention. At this point that the Bryce is saying is that even if it turns out that it's worth more than the money, so in a way that might seem like agronatole. He's paying him now. He's only going to come back with the goodies, whatever he gets, a day or two from now, whatever it is. In other words, yeah, but right. So that's why it's mutter. But the point is why it might be usher is even if you're paying for it, but you're only getting it in a week from now. Let's say when I finish going through the farm. So in the way that you're giving me $10, you're getting back $20 worth. That should be a problem. But agernatule, no, because if it would be worth less than the money, the guy would also take it. So this is what's called korov lehefsid kemoy l'schar. This is a theme that's going to be important in this parak. That it's an equal chance. It's potluck. You might make more, you might make less. That's not a problem about agar naturally. But avol says the Brisa imam, but if he tells him different wording, if he tells him masha izi cholvas kach v'kach, this that my goats will be milked, this amount of the measurement. Machala, amount of so, how would you measure the milk? And that's machala, that's sold to you. And he's getting a cheaper price for the fact that he's prepaying, or because he's saying it's clear now how much it is. If it's random, so you don't know, it could be up or down. But now he's saying how much, and he's obviously charging him less because he's prepaying. Or this amount of wool that we're going to get out of my sheep, and he tells him how much. So he's clearly saying machlach is sold to you now, and he's getting a cheaper price. Or whatever honey loaves I'm going to get off is sold to you. That's us. That's forbidden. Now says the Gemara, now whatever increase is going to be over here, these things come by themselves. But kiven the lesnu bahi shaita, since it's not there at that moment, so usher, it's going to be forbidden, which is like Rav's teaching that even though these are things that grow by themselves, it's still going to be a problem if you're going to be giving more than what the person had given. And therefore you see, like Rav's teaching, that that's going to be asr. What has what? It's with these items. But here he does tell him how much it is, right? It is interesting. This case is he tells him Mash Izi Chabas Kach V'Kach. He's telling him how much it is. So what's the problem over here? He's prepaying, right? This case? It's usr. Rashi makes it sound like Oizl Gabei B'Schach Hakdamas Hamois. So that's the isser. So you're right. What is the comparison between these two cases of these are things that passively come? So what do you mean there? Meaning that, but you already said how much it is going to be. I mean, it wasn't taken down yet. What's the difference of the memela karavu? What does it mean, boy? Who cares if the memela karavu? What's the theme of mas? Right, but what? So you're saying so what's that's memela karavu? That's the idea of memela karavu, that by right. So actually, you could understand this a little bit better. In other words, the bees might not have made it yet. Even it didn't come yet. Even so, even though it happens by itself, he doesn't make the milk. I mean, the milk happens. The animal, right. The animals make it. He doesn't make it. So even so, we see that even though it comes by itself, it's still asr. But that's one version. Ikeda Amr, there are those that say that actually by the pumpkin, going back to the pumpkin case, this was all Rav. Amr Rav, he disagrees. He says, no, even in Memela Karavu, since it actually the pumpkins grow by themselves, shopper dummy, it actually is okay. He disagrees. He says, even if at the time of the sale did not have large pumpkins, it is permitted. Because and says didn't we just bring in the brisa by the shearings of the wool and by the milk that it is usher even though it happens by itself? So that seems to contradict Rav. It says no. Hasam over there, the milk that comes later, lav mine karavu, that does not come from the milk that was in the animal at the time of the sale, because lav mine karavu, that's not all coming from the previous milk. The shakli lay lahai that this guy is taking the whole thing. It's just that other milk takes its place. So there it's going to be aser. Hacha over here, what's added on to the small pumpkins that become big, minei karavu. It's coming from the small pumpkins. The small pumpkins were already there at the time of the sale. It's from that it's getting better and bigger. The chishak lay lahai. When this guy takes the small pumpkins, the bigger pumpkin's not coming in its place. Obviously, it's growing from the smaller pumpkin. The lekech already acquired the pumpkins now when they're small and there was no prepayment. And his own pumpkins grew larger on their own without the seller's work. And the lekech did not receive any benefits from the seller. So it says, Rava, that's the difference between the cases of the small becoming big pumpkins and the milk and the wool, and because those are independent of what was there from before. That memeli karav is going to be aser. But the memeli karav of the smaller pumpkin to the big pumpkin, says Rav, I disagree with Rav, and I say that there actually is going to be mutter. Similar discussion. Amar Abaya says, Shari leile inish lamemele lechavre. A person is permitted to tell his friend, Heilach arba zuzi, take 4 zuzi of achavita de chamra. You have a barrel of wine. Take here's 4 zuzi for your barrel of wine that you have, and as following: itakfa, if it sours, b'shuscha, it's in your possession. You're going to suffer the loss if it spoils. Iyikra izila, if it goes up or down in price, that b'shusi, I'll take responsibility for that. So Abaye says you're allowed to do that. It's mutter. On that, Rav Shravi Abaye says, wait a second, how could you do that? It's Hi, this is a case of karav l'schar. It's closer to profit because if it goes up in price, the wine. V'rachik lehefsedu. It's far from a possibility of loss because if it sours, the buyer's not taking responsibility. So what's this problem of karav l'schar v'rachik lehefsed? So a brisa later on, Daf Yomi Aleph teaches us if something is karav l'schar, but it's rachik for hefsed, the guy's a Russia. Why is the guy a Russia? Because really he's taking ribbis. What does that mean? How's he taking ribbis? What shaykh is? It's a buying. A guy buying a barrel of wine for 4 zuz, and he's saying that if it sours, it's yours. I'm not taking it. If it goes up in price or down, I'll take it. He says no. Because since he's not taking responsibility for the purchase, comes out, it's not really sold. If it's sold, what's this tonight that you're making that if it's ours, it's not mine? You bought it or you didn't buy it? Right.
Unlike the market value, something that's independent of the first, of the wine, it's your wine. You keep the price, you take care of it. Was a good wine.
Right. Now the problem. Right. So you have to figure out the details. But lamaisa, if that is the case, what ends up happening is that what was the money then? The money then is no. I understand. Yeah.
Goes up in value. No, he keeps it for you, but he wants to know it goes out. But I know he didn't give me wine. He keeps the wine. It's just like he's buying the wine for it. But it's his already.
Right, but I'm saying, but if let's say,
it's his already done. And if it goes sour, then well, because the sour says the guarantee, and it's not his.
No, so no. Even a good point. Right. No. No. Even if let's say no. Even if. Right. What? Oh yeah. No, but I'm saying what we have to figure out then is just to focus on this point that what Rashi is stressing on this idea is that what ends up happening is that really that means to say that the money is a loan. That's really what it is because Rashi says you can't call it a sale because you're not accepting any responsibility for the purchase. So if it's a sale, it's a sale. You bought it. Rashi is not learning like, oh, it's sold and then you're getting your money back. It sounds like that this is different than other cases. That you didn't buy it yet, because if you bought it, then you do have responsibility. Right, but it wasn't good. Meaning, no. Here, if it's going to sour, right? But here it's different. It's going to sour. It's not like it was bad wine yet. It's going to sour. Not going to sour. What does that mean? You're not taking responsibility. You bought it. So you bought Navas. It's like a loan, and then the fact that you're gaining of when it goes up in price. So what does that mean? That means say when you're going to get the wine back, you're essentially getting ribbis on your money. You gave $100 for the wine. You gave 4 zuz, and now it goes up in price. You're getting back 6 zuz of wine back. True, that's really what the Gemara has answered. But for now, the Gemara's understanding it as a ratio of like that you're closer to profit than to loss, because when it comes to souring, that you're not taking responsibility. So, and we can't call it then the sale because you're obviously not taking responsibility. So it's like essentially a loan, and then you're getting back more than what you gave. Well, that should be a problem about ribbis. Obviously, there's a lot of more technical details on a lot of these things, but that's the basic idea. And that's as Amalei says, no, given the Mekibel allows Zule, since also accepting the depreciation, no, it's close to both, not just only to profit. When it's somewhere possible both, then that's not considered a problem about agronatule. That's not like, because you're waiting for the money, then you're getting interest, because you could have lost also. So that's not a problem about again, these are all obviously not the biblical, because it's not like a straight up ribbis ketzutza, but for the ribbis that we're describing, as long as it's somewhere in the middle, that would not be a violation of the halacha of ribbis. Yeah, halacha of the next Mishnah, continuing on this theme of obviously the parak of ribbis, hamabes chaveiroi. someone lends his friend money, lo yoder b'chatzer chinam. So he shouldn't live in the guy's courtyard for free, meaning the malva may not live in the loiva's house for free. You can't freeload by him. And neither can he go ahead and pay for less than the market price, because essentially that's ribis. The lender getting any profit from the borrower is a violation of interest on this money. Now, the Gemara qualifies this teaching. Amar Rav Yisib Amenyumi Amar Rav Nachman. It says, Amru. Although we said in Bava Kama in the second paragraph of Alpha Medal, Hadar b'chatza chaver Shloimy Daitoi. If someone lives, a guy squatting in his friend's field without his awareness, he does not have to pay him rent money, which the Gemara there explained. We were talking about what's called chatzar d'loikaim la'agra, that the courtyard, the guy doesn't usually rent out his villa. But this guy, right, that's living there, he generally has to pay to stay somewhere. That's called zenene. This guy who's squatting there is getting benefit, but the guy, the owner of the villa, is leichasa because he's not renting it out anyway. So the halacha is generally that you don't have to pay. But let's say but let's say the guy lent him money, and now the lender is squatting in the borrower's villa. The lender has to pay the wages. Even if he's living there before, and now he's still there. Well, I hear a good shiloh. You want to know what would that be in that situation? Good question. What would it be then? Would we look at it differently? Yeah, you have to know. But the Gemara says, "My kamash wulan." The Gemara says, "What's the chiddush?" Tanin is the halacha of our Mishnah. We said, "Amavis chaveira." If someone lends his friend, lo yod b'chatzer chinam, shouldn't live there for free. They shouldn't rent below market value. They should ribis. That's ribis. Isn't this exactly the case of the Mishnah? What's the chiddush of Rav Nachman? Says the Gemara, no, even if he only taught the halacha from the Mishnah, I would have said hanamili. When did the Mishnah obligate you to pay? Is b'chatzah the kaimala agra. The guy usually rents out his villa. And the lender himself, he would have to rent another apartment if he wouldn't find the borrower's villa, which that's a case of zenene, and the owner of the chatzah, the borrower, is chaser, because he usually rents out the villa. He would have rented out to someone else. But a courtyard that he doesn't usually rent out, which is what's called zeloi chaser. And moreover, the lender, he doesn't usually rent villas, because which would make him zeloinena, because anyway he wouldn't have rented. He has other places that he could crash. He has this old friend that she's from old classmate, and this guy wouldn't be paying for. He never paid for a place to stay in his life. The guy is not one of those guys. He knows how to freeload on anyone. So Emaloi, then I would say that then it wouldn't be a problem but ribis, because there's no profit here that's being tendered. Kamash Malan, that's the chiddush that Rav Nachman is teaching us, that no, Lamaisa, it does look like ribis, and therefore it's going to be forbidden. That's the chiddush of Rav Nachman's case, which Rashi talks about something with, which Taisa discusses this case of lending money on a house and living there, even if he's taking off, whatever, related to the halacha of leiskim and b'pachas. But that's one version. Ikadam, and then those that say a different version. Amr Rav Yisib Amenyumi Amr Rav Nachman. He says, Amru, even though they said, again, quoting the Gemara in Bava Kama, that someone lives in his friend's courtyard without his awareness. It doesn't have to pay him, because that's what's called zen and chaser. But halveini, this is a different version. The first version, with the words were, if you were paying attention, helvehu, if he happened to have lent him and he's living in his courtyard, this version is different wording. This version is saying he stipulated. He's saying halveini v'dor b'chatzedi. The borrower is saying, look, do me a favor. I need a few thousand right now. I have nothing on me right now. If you lend me the money, you can live in my villa. I'm not using it anyway. So then the halacha is tzarich la'atzli. He can't use the borrower's villa for the weekend. He has to pay him for whatever it costs to use the villa. That's the halacha, again, because that would be a violation of ribbis. So we have these two different versions. So the Gemara explains the difference between these two different versions. Manda mehelveyu, according to the one that said that the violation is when he just lends him. And they didn't make up with him that he's going to stay in his apartment. Even so, it's going to be usher. Oh, well, then kol shekain, then all the more so, helveni, for sure, when he makes up with him that, yes, like ribbis, you could stay in my apartment for free, for sure that would be forbidden. But amandam helveni, according to the one that says that the case is specifically that forbidden when he tells him, lend me and then you could stay in my apartment, but if he just happened to lend him and then he's staying in his apartment, then that wouldn't be forbidden. My time, what's the reason? Because that was not their intention originally when they lent it to him. Less number. So we're not bothered by the fact that he's staying there because that was not part of the transaction. And therefore, says Rashi, our Mishnah that says that it's forbidden would either have to be talking about when they made this up, or meaning either at the time when they gave the money or afterwards. That's why it's forbidden. But if the guy just happened to stay there, that wouldn't be an outright violation of ribbis if that was not spoken about. Now, relating back to this teaching, the Gemara says, Rav Yisrael bar Chama, talk of Avde de Inchi, the Masik Bozuzi. He would grab the servants of people that owed him money. He would force those guys, slaves, to work for him. You owe me $1,000. I'm going to grab your slave and do work with them to pay him back the amount of money that you owe me. So Amalei Rabba Berei, Rabba the son of Rav Yisrael bar Chama, said to him, "My time ovid maharchi. Why does the master do this?" So Amalei says, "What do you mean? What's the problem? I'm not Rav Nachman, really. I hold like Rav Nachman." Which is, the Rav Nachman says, Avda, a slave, nohim kerise, the bread that he eats in his belly, loy shavi, he's not worth that amount. Meaning, I'm feeding the worker the day when I'm doing work with him. So if anything, I'm doing the guy who owes me the money a favor, because the slave is not even worth the bread that he eats. Amalei says, yeah, well, when did Rav Nachman say, this halach is gekun Dori Avde, like his slave Dori, who was the market Beikubi. He was a letz. He was a joker that used to dance in the stores and to drink wine, and he wasn't worth much. And therefore, whoever's going to feed him, you could take him. But another slave, the strong-bodied guy that you're doing work with, did he say such a thing that he's not worth the bread that he eats? Amalei says, no, Anoki Hodrab Daniel Barav Katina, Amaravs really, which is the Amar that he said, Hatekev Abdishachavedoi. Someone grabs the slave of his friend, it does work with him. Pater, it's pater. Why would you be pater? As Getin top of Samachem Alf, because the Nichale delay Nistri Avde. The owner of the slave is pleased that his slave is not doing is sitting idle, because he doesn't want him to get used to being a lazy guy, lazy bum, just sitting around doing nothing. So he's actually happy that someone's taking his slave and doing work with him. So Amalei said to him, wait a second. When do we say this? That's only if he doesn't owe you money. So therefore, they're doing work with the slave. Yeah, the guy's happy. But the master, giving the masik bezuzi, since you're collecting money from these people, it looks like ribbis because they owe you money, and now you're using the services of the slave. Because the Amr of Yisrael Bava Metzia Daf, which is a teaching we mentioned before, it said like this: even though they said that if you're living in the friend's courtyard without his awareness, you don't have to pay him anything. So let's say that would be the same thing by the slave. If you use someone's slave, you don't have to pay the guy, because the guy's happy that his slave is a bum, doesn't want to get used to not doing anything. Yeah, go ahead, do work with him. But that would be the equivalent of living in someone's, squatting in someone's apartment. You don't have to pay him. But let's say guy lent the money and then he lives in this court. Then he has to go ahead and pay him for the wages. So this should be the same thing. Amalei said to him, "You're right." Hadrabi says, "I back out. It's true. You showed me that even though a regular guy could, but I can't because to me it looks like ribbis." Amabaya. Baya says, "Haiman demasik zuzi dirabisa b'chavre." If a guy is a loiva of malva, one zuz for ribbis, and the ka'azli chiti, and the price of wheat was going for arba grivi. Grivi is a certain measurement. 4 grivi bezuzah b'shuka. In the market, you could buy for 1 zuz 4 grivi. And now this lender wanted to collect the 1 zuz of ribbis of interest from the borrower. So iu chamisha. He gave the malva 5 measurements in lieu of the zuz that he owed him. Says Abaya ki mafkina minei. When we subsequently collect the ribbis from the lender that he took, which is like Rabbi Lazar that said in Samachal from the base, that when there's ribbis katsutza, when there was a set amount of interest, judges extract that money. And that's like we say on Amid Beis that we paskin like that teaching. We're going to take away 4 measurements. And idach, the extra measurement, he was just giving him a cheaper price, and that was a gift. But we're not going to collect all the 5 because really the zuz worth was really 4. So we're only going to extract, even though he gave him 5, we're going to take back 4. Ribbis under ribbis. He owed him a zuz, and he gave him, but that wasn't for any loan or anything. He just gave him an extra gift. He threw in an extra 1. Amatuna. A karasatay for the loan. He had a baby. Gave him a gift. Yeah. So what does it mean? I hear you want to say that maybe that should be a problem, but I don't know. But we don't collect that because that's not ribbis ketzutza. We only collect the ribbis ketzutza. So the extra 1, even if that would be a violation of the halacha, that still wouldn't be collected. But Rav Ami disagrees. There's no chamish mafkinim. We're actually going to take away 5. Why? Because the mikara b'terech zabisa asad liyadei. Lamaisa, when the guy was giving him the kernels of wheat, yeah, he might have given him extra, but ultimately it was the medium of ribbis, and therefore it's all included for that amount of ribbis. Another teaching, Vama Baya, says, Haiman demasik arba zuzi dirabisa b'chavre. The guy's collecting 4 zuz of ribbis from his friend. And he gives him, instead, he pays him a jacket, which was worth more than the amount. But the guy's like, I have this Armani jacket, I don't need it, take this for the ribbis. When we collect from him, we only collect 4. We don't take away the jacket, meaning the sale is done, and we just have to give back the set amount of ribbis to the owner. Rav Amay disagrees, no. Here also he says, we're going to take away the whole jacket. What's the reason? He says, we don't want people to say, the jacket that he's wearing, it's a jacket of ribbis. So even though it's $10 and the ribbis was only $4, we're going to take away the whole jacket. One more teaching, Rava says, Haiman Damasik traces zuzah to the beast of a. If someone was collecting 12 zuzah of ribbis on his friend, now he leases him his courtyard, which the miskacha ba'alm ba'asara. Generally, it costs 10 zuz to rent that villa. He says, I'll lease it to you for 12, meaning essentially the 12 that I owe you on interest, my villa that's usually 10, let's call it even. I'll rent it to you for 12, and that's it. When we take away from the lender the money, which really he never got money, he just got that villa for the weekend, we're going to take away 12 from him. So wait, Amalei Rav Achmad Difla Ravina says, why? Why can't the lender tell the borrower, Ki agrahachim, when I had rented from you a higher price, usually rent out your villa for 10, I was paying 12. You know why? Because it was extra money, it was free money for me. It was my interest money. I had no problem paying, quote unquote. It was my points. It's like whatever, it's like it was free money. I don't mind paying 12. Now that I'm not gaining because the rabbis are taking away the interest money from me, so I want to rent it only how much everyone pays only 10. Now suddenly I have to pay 12. It's not free money for me anymore. I don't want to pay you 12. Says the Gemara, you knew, you accepted, and therefore that's the price you paid. And now the rabbis are taking away for the money. You can lose 12 and not just 10. Thank you. Anytime. Yes.